This week in IT, I look at changes that Microsoft is promising to bring to its controversial AI feature, Windows Recall, that should help to calm fears that the data that it collects might be used for nefarious purposes. So stay tuned to find out more. Welcome to This Week in IT, the show where I talk about everything connected to Windows, Microsoft 365 and Azure. But before I get started today, I've got a quick favour to ask you. As we go live today, we're on about 6,840 subscribers, and I'd really love it if we could push it this week up to around 7,000. So if you'd like to help us meet our goal, then please subscribe to the channel and don't forget to hit the bell notification to make sure you don't miss out on our weekly uploads. So a few weeks ago at its annual build conference, Microsoft announced a new feature called Windows Recall. Now, despite what you may have read on the internet about it recently, it hasn't exactly been a secret. Microsoft has talked at least a year ago about the potential of introducing a feature to Windows that would use OCR in some way to record what it is that we're doing and allow us to search it, although it was kind of without any details. And Microsoft finally announced how that's all going to hang together in this new feature. So how does Windows Recall work? When it's enabled, it takes screenshots of your desktop every few seconds, and then it uses optical character recognition and Azure AI that runs on the local device using the MPU to create a huge index essentially of what it is that you're doing at any one time that you can then go back and search. So for instance, it might be that you were working on a particular document or looking at something on the internet, and maybe you don't know when or where that information was exactly to get back to it, but you will be able to search the Windows Recall database and it will be able to find that information for you and then take you to that document or to that web page. Now, of course, that involves Windows Recall storing a lot of information about all the things that you've been doing on your local device. Microsoft has been very keen to point out that all the information is stored locally. All the data processing happens locally using that MPU in these new Copilot Plus PCs. And they've been very vocal about other security measures like BitLocker disk encryption and the Pluton security chip, which they say helped protect all of this data. But of course, is that true? Microsoft said, well, a remote hacker will not be able to get access to that locally stored Windows Recall data. But that of course rings alarm bells because even somebody like me who isn't a security expert necessarily probably knows that that statement isn't true. And it was quickly proven by security researchers that they were able to remotely hack the database and read everything that's in it. One researcher that's quite well known in the Twitter sphere, if you like, Kevin Beaumont, was able to automate remotely hacking the database, and he found out that essentially it's stored in a plain text SQLite database, and not only can you remotely hack that database and read the contents, that other users on the device can also get access to the database if they really want to. With all the concern about Windows Recall and this new information that we have from independent security researchers and even some security people from within Microsoft, they have announced some changes to Windows Recall that are going to be made before it goes into public preview on Copilot Plus PCs on June the 18th. So Microsoft has confirmed that Windows Recall will be disabled by default and that you'll have the option to enable it during the out-of-box setup experience. Snapshots are going to get just-in-time decryption. So what that means is that the database used to store the snapshots is going to be encrypted, and the only way that you'll be able to unlock it is using Windows Hello. So what that means in practice is if you start the Windows Recall app and you want to search that database, you will need to provide authentication again using Windows Hello. So that means some kind of biometric gesture like a fingerprint or face recognition, or a PIN, and only at that point will the database be unlocked in order for you to search it. Microsoft is saying that the Windows Recall search index will also be encrypted, and they're pointing out that this feature will only be available on Copilot Plus PCs that have that security chip, the Pluton security chip, and enhanced sign-in security enabled for Windows Hello. So basically that enhanced sign-in security provides another level of isolation, keeping biometric gestures segregated from the operating system using virtualization-based security. So regardless of the changes that Microsoft is now making to Recall, there are of course some users that just don't trust Microsoft. So some people think that Microsoft is going to automatically enable this feature in the future without their consent. And of course, Microsoft does have a bit of a habit with Windows of kind of enabling features that were previously disabled. Now, sometimes that is just pure technical incompetence, I believe, on Microsoft's part. I remember working in organizations as an administrator in the past with features that were specifically disabled on our PCs, but then, an update got applied, a service pack or something like that, and lo and behold, that feature becomes enabled for whatever reason. Now, I don't think that was something that Microsoft was doing on purpose, but it's just a technical issue that shouldn't have occurred, but it did for whatever reason. There are other people who just don't believe Microsoft isn't going to use their personal data to train their AI models or to target them with advertising in the future. Microsoft has said, that is definitely not the case. This data that's being collected isn't going to be used to train their AI models. Well, You've either got to decide you're going to trust Microsoft or you're not going to trust Microsoft. Personally, I trust Microsoft. I choose to use Windows. And my only advice really to give you is if you don't trust Microsoft, there are other options out there. You don't have to use Windows. If you prefer, you can use Linux, you can use Chrome OS, so take your pick. It's not obligatory for you to use Windows, of course. So while I do understand this issue that some users have with Microsoft and trust, you've got a choice to make at this stage. And at the moment, most of us don't have to worry about it because we're not likely to have the hardware that's going to enable all of those features, at least within the next 12 months or so. It's going to take a while before most PCs have the hardware to enable all of this AI stuff. So I'm glad that Microsoft has addressed some of these basic issues with security. Of course, saying that BitLocker protects your data. Well, it does at rest, but essentially if somebody gets hold of your password, then BitLocker isn't going to help you necessarily at that stage. Once you've got the login details and physical or remote access, then BitLocker no longer helps you. Of course, you need extra protections to make sure that hackers can't remotely access, or other users on the same device as well cannot access this data. And those things that Microsoft has announced this week go quite a long way to make sure that those other potential backdoors into this data are closed as much as they can be. There isn't anything as 100% secure, so whatever the case, there's always the risk of your data on your device being hacked. So all blown out of proportion a little bit by the press and some users that like to get a little bit hysterical about it, in my opinion. But let me know what you think about Windows Recall in the comments below. Is it something that you wouldn't be interested in using at all? You're definitely going to disable it. Or are you quite happy for Microsoft to be collecting, storing and processing your data in this way on a potentially new device that you might own sometime in the near future? I'd love to know what you think. If you found this video useful, I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up, because it helps to get the video seen by more people on YouTube and to grow our channel. I'm going to leave another video on the screen for you now that you might also find interesting if you're a VMware customer, because a new announcement that Microsoft made last week is bringing VCF license portability to Azure VMware solution. So do check that out. But that's it from me for this week, and I'll see you next time.